Good morning, children. Today, in our history class, we will start the new chapter, chapter 5, which titles British Policies and Impacts. Under this chapter, or after the completion of this chapter, you will be able to understand British economic policies and its impacts, police reforms, administrative setup by Britishers, reforms in the field of education, purpose of British education policy and its effects, transport and communication. So these are the things which we are going to deal under this chapter, and we to learn or come to know more about the British policies which were enforced in our country and what were its effects. So without wasting the time, let's start our chapter. Under the first topic, economic policy and revenue reform, Lord Cornwallis, he introduced the permanent revenue settlement in Bengal in AD 1793, and this system arose a steady flow of revenue with which they could plan their expenditure. So from our money they were using it for their expenditure. Okay, and what were the features of the system? Let us look at a glance of it. The revenue was fixed, so the amount to be taken from the people was fixed, no ups and downs in that. The local jamidars were made responsible for the revenue collection, so they were the one who were collecting the revenue from the people under the head or the instruction given by the Britishers. Okay, now 10% of the total collection was paid to zamidars for their service. Okay, so out of 100, only the 10% was given to the zamidars, and the rest 90% was under the hand or in the hands of the Britishers. The jamidar had right to confiscate the land of the peasant, one who failed to pay revenue. It means that zamidars had the permission to take away the land of the peasant who were failed to pay the revenue, which led the zamidars could because zamidar as we're taking the land from the people, so if they want the land they have to pay the revenue due. That means the revenue which is left they can give that revenue to the Britishers and they can become the landholder of those lands. Okay, next, land thus became a saleable property and peasants can easily lose their rights over their land because they could not pay the revenue. It was fixed, whether they have profit or loss they have to pay the revenue, and they could not pay. So what to do? The jamidars were taking the land, and the which is the leftover money they were giving to the Britishers and taking away the field. So this made the peasant landless, and the landless farmers were reduced to the positions of teenagers. Okay, so these were the impact or the features of the system revenue policies. Okay, now let us look the impact. What was the impact of this permanent revenue system? Okay, the economic revenue system which was launched, that was called permanent revenue settlement. Now what was the impact of that settlement? We will be looking at. Peasants were not given concessions. When crops failed, they could not pay the revenue. So there was no mercy on the peasants when they could not pay it due to the crops were not grown properly, but they had to pay the money. Rate of revenue was high and it was a burden on the poor farmers. Yes, that was really tough for the farmers. Now, Jamidars in general squeezed the peasant and collected as much as they could. So, the Jamidars were also very cruel towards the peasants, and the peasants had no place where they can complain. Now, this is because the darogas of the local thanas or the police of the local thanas, they worked in collaboration with the zamidars and exploited the unfortunate peasants. So even the police were with the company, or they were in the collaborated with the zamidars, and both of them worked for the Britishers. So the peasants could not make their complaints. Now peasants took loans on occasions which they obviously could not pay, and due to the high rate of the interest and revenue. So this really made the condition of peasants was pathetic. Now, the peasants lost the land and became landless agriculture workers. The Jamidars, who were also money lenders, soon became the landowners, because I told you children that they were taking away the lands and they were paying it, the leftover revenue was paid by them to the Britishers, and they were having lands in their hands. So this made them landowners, which made the peasant landless. The system worked very well according to the Britishers. Okay, they were very comfortable and very happy that what they have planned was executed in the same way as they wanted it to be. Okay, and in the other presidencies the arrangement was more or less the same. The system was called Royatwari system. So in other area also the system was quite similar to the permanent revenue system, and this was like in other places it was called Royatwari system, and in other regions the arrangement was over was state called Mahals, and so it was termed as the Malwari system. So, in short, the revenue was anyhow taken from the peasants by the Jamidars under the rule of the Britishers, which made the condition of peasants landless as well as very poor. Okay. Now let us look at the another topic, that is police reforms. In AD 1719, the post of the Superintendent of Police was created in Calcutta. Okay, and children, similar posts were created in other cities also, and the Lord Cornwallis, who has established this permanent revenue system, he was not willing to depend upon the local zamindars for maintenance of law and order. So he established a police system. Okay, and every district had a number of thanas placed under the charge of a daroga, assisted by a number of constable. So the police system, like there will be a police station, there will be a police, and there will be local assistant like constables. So this system was inaugurated or started by the Britishers, and who was the one behind the establishment of the system? Lord Cornwallis. Okay, now we will be looking into the impact of Cornwallis administrative reforms. Now, Cornwallis do not doubt set up on elaborate system of administration, but obviously children, it was all for the benefit of the British in India. They were the one who wanted to have profit from the Indians, and they used to take this profit and move to the country England. Okay, now let us look what is the impact of it. The cost of this extensive administration was all paid from the taxes collected from the Indians. So they were so smart, Britishers, that they collected the money from us, and from our money they were paying the taxes. They were not using their money. Okay. Now, the high salaries and the increase in pay of the company's servant were all paid from the revenues of India. As I told you, the revenues were collected by the Zamindars, and the 90% of it was given to the Britishers. Only the 10% was left with the Zamindars. So, the high salaries and the increase in the pay of the company's servant, that means the salary everywhere was given from the revenue they have collected from the Indians. Okay, and consequently, this led to a systematic drainage of wealth from India. Obviously, when the money is taken from us and they are not using their money, they are giving the salary, whatever they want to tax, salary, whatever they have to give, it was given from our money. So, this really brought a drainage or the decrease in the wealth from our country. And these British officers, they never made India their home. Okay, and after retirement they left for England, carrying with them their earnings from India. That means they were so smart children that they came here, they worked here, and the salary they have taken or they've earned money from us, and they have paid their our salary from our money only, and they have collected the profit everywhere, and they left there for England. They never had their homes here, they left in England and they were enjoying there. So just see the policies, it was like making the Indians poor. They made it. Okay, now the Cornwallis never trusted the Indians and never appointed them in high post. Okay, most of the designation, the high post was given to the Britishers. They never appointed the Indians for the high post. Okay, like they never trusted Indians, and they never appointed the high post. They remained the British policy right till the end. Obviously, no imperial master could trust the people whom they ruled into believing that they would take care to incur the maximum profit for the colonial master's children. So, this impact of administration was also brought the Indian wealth down. Okay. Now, let us look in the administrative setup by the Lord Bentinck. Now, Lord Bentinck introduced a number of reforms in administration. Okay, now what was that? He himself assured the charge of the commander in chief along with the responsibilities of the governor general. Now you can see that the high post was controlled or charged by him only, it was not given to the Indians. Same. Now, the post of the law member was created in the Governor General's Executive Council, and the Lord Macaulay was made the first law member. So, the first law member was also a Britisher, whose name was Lord Macaulay. Now, the collector was responsible for all affairs related to the administration of a district. Okay, he was the one who had to be there. Now, Lord William Bentinck, the Governor General, who tried to bring some progressive reforms for the Indians. Now, he was the one who really had, we can say, a heart, who really brought some changes and some progressive reforms. That means good reforms for our Indians, and he passed some law against the social evils like social customs which are practiced in India, which was really inhuman towards the Indians. So he brought some changes. Now let us see what changes and what law he has passed against those social evils. The law passed against social evils were sati system, female infanticide. Children's sati system was a cruel custom in which the widow was burned in the funeral pyre of her husband. Okay, the live lady who has to burn along with the husband just for the sati system. Now, female infanticide, it means the practice of killing a female babies. Okay, human sacrifices performed by the tribes in Orissa or it was practiced in Odisha. Now, slavery, it was legally abolished in 1856, and widow remarriages. A law was passed in 1856 for the favor of the widow remarriage. So it was these were the cruel practices which was being done in our country, and it was reformed or changes were brought due to the Lord William Bentinck. Okay, now this Bentinck suppressed the thugs who were actually gang of robbers. Okay, they killed travelers and looted all their belongings. So they were thugs, they are like a kind of a thief who takes all our wealth and they keep it along with themselves, and we are left wealthless. So he hunted the thugs from one place to another, killing or punishing the slavery, and within 6 years the road became free for the thugs, because due to the fear of the thugs no one wanted to travel through the road. So what he did, an industrial school was started for the children of the thugs at Jabalpur, and so they could learn the craft, earn a livelihood and settle there. This also became a reform system for the thugs. Okay, now let us see the reform in the field of the education. Now children, the East India Company was severely criticized in England for not doing anything for the welfare of the Indians. So after that, the company had made a solution for in the field of education. What was that? Charter Act of 1813 was passed. What was it? Charter Act directed the company to spend a sum of 1 lakh rupees for the purpose of education in India. But children, the money was that was not enough for the education of a vast country like India. and that money was left unused. Now this was because the government could not decided on the type of education. Now which type of education, whether it has to be in western or Indian. Now the medium of instruction which has to be given has to be English or vernacular means the local language, okay, and was to be introduced in India. Now, so Dr. H.F. Wilson and his supporters were in the opinion that the money should be spent for the spread of classical oriented learning. Now ultimately, the during the time of Lord Bentinck, you know the Lord Bentinck which brought the reforms in the administrative system, he was decided finally that what to be done, that law commission held by Sir Thomas, who decided to have western education and sciences through the medium of English. So finally it was decided that the education would be a western style, and which language to be used as a medium of education, that to be English. Now it was a good reform for us which made us learn English, which made the people learn English. The Western education was introduced in our country. Due to that, today we are favorable in learning the language as well as learning the education system. Okay. Now, the Wood's Dispatch led for the foundation of education in India. Accordingly, the universities were started in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras in AD 1857. So, obviously, we know, children, that these are the places where first the universities were started, and it was led under the whose foundations. It was the Wood's Dispatch. Okay. Now, under the initiative of Bentinck and Elphinstone, College of Bombay and the Calcutta Medical College was started. Now, under the Governor General of Lord Dalhousie, an education department was established in the Presidency towns. Presidency towns means reputed towns. Okay, so which really brought a good reform in the education system. Okay. And you know, the large number of government school and colleges were also started in important cities, and grants and aid were given to the affiliated schools, and training institutions were also established to provide trained teachers to ever increase number of schools. Obviously, children, when we have the school, we have the system, we need to have the teachers according to the Western education, according to the learning of that language. So they the one who established the institutions also where teachers were trained accordingly. Okay. Now, what was the purpose of education in India? Let us see what is the policy of education. The purpose of British system of education was to get a men to work in the offices and help the Britisher in the tasks of administration. Now, children, this was the reason that they wanted the people from India to work in their offices and help the Britishers in the administration system, because children, the British education truly they brought the modern system of education in our country. But what was the reason behind doing this? Now it was the reason that recruiting a men from India would be cheaper than having to purchase services from the England. If we get a people working from here itself, from the local area, that is India, they had India, the people from recruiting a people from India would be cheaper. They have to pay the less and the work could be done. And in comparatively, if they get anyone from England, obviously the person will be demanding high salary, as well as they have to look after the accommodation of that person. That is the reason they wanted the people of India to be educated, so that they can take the benefit of it in their work. Okay. Now what was the result of this purpose of British education? Let's see. The Indians who were educated in Western services developed a wide gap with the vast majority of unfortunate Indians. Okay. The educated Indians were Western in outlook and thought. Now obviously, children, they are learning the language, the system, so they were kind of having a thoughts and outlook as a Western. The educated Indians were employed in the civil service under the British rule. Okay, and the Britishers were quite successful in getting a group of loyal subjects to prop up their rule. So they got some handful of people, loyal people who were working for them, and they have to pay less also. So this was the effect of the policies of British education. Now, what are the effects or result of the British education in India? Let's see. The Indians were well fed with the principle of Western liberation and democracy, soon began to challenge the British rule and became consequence of nationalism and self-rule. So this really helped our Indians to learn the system and to it's like key to throwing the things back to them, now putting the ball into their basket and standing for our rights. Okay, and English as the medium of instruction overcame the language barriers, because they were talking in English and we Indians didn't knew that language, so it was a kind of barrier, and due to this education system we were able to learn the language, so it overcome the language barrier. Now we could able to understand what they mean, what they want to talk, what they have their things plans. Okay, and the development of means of communication was introduced by the British to control the vast country, which ultimately enabled the nationalists to overcome the barriers of distance and maintain close ties with each other. Now the transport and communication system also really helped us. Okay, now what was that? The important factors focused on was railway and telegraph. Now we know that this was a great gift of them to us. Okay, we all know that the first railway line was laid in AD 1853 in India during the time of Lord Dalhousie. And children, we know that the line was laid between Bombay, that is your Mumbai, and Thane. The first railway tracks was laid there. And children, the Britishers in India, they felt an urgent need of improving transport and communication system to accelerate and the exploitation of country and crush those opposed them. This was of the British colonial policy. Yes, there are so many policies. Now to improve the transport and communication, many roads were made, existing roads were improved. That means the roads which were not so good, they were also improved. We can see this. The railway helped transport of raw materials from the source of the market to the ports and finished goods from the ports to the market. The introduction of railways in India helped the British exploit the Indians. However, the Indian too benefited from the introduction of railways. Yes, this was the gift, as I told you. Travel and transport became easier and cheaper, and the barrier of negotiation was removed. So this was the all what we have learned in this chapter about the British policies, the impacts, and the unknowingly gift they have given to us, that's language and Western education. Okay, thank you children. If you have any doubts or any queries, you are free to ask me. Thank you.